The ghostly tape. In a small dorm room, a typical living space for a college student, cluttered with textbooks and clothes. Each desk lamp serves as the only real source of light. Lai and Khan, two female students, are sitting on an old carpet next to the TV stand, preparing to watch a movie for their weekend break. The TV is old, seemingly from the 90s, still equipped with a VHS player. Beside the TV is an old cardboard box, filled with random tapes and outdated electronics. The box came from a trip they had taken earlier that day to a vintage thrift store. Back at the dorm, they rummaged through the tapes, laughing at the absurdity of their choices: old sitcoms, instructional videos, forgotten movies. Then, they found a plain black VHS tape. It had no markings except for a single word hastily scrawled in faded red ink on the label: "Don't." The label was torn and dirty, as though it had passed through countless hands before. They hesitated for a moment, but curiosity quickly won them over. Lai slid the tape into the VHS player. The TV crackled to life with a sharp, screeching sound. The picture was grainy, distorted, and flickered with a buzzing noise. The first image appeared: a dilapidated house in the middle of a dark, dense forest. The camera shook as if it was being held in someone's hand. There was no sound except the rustling of leaves. The house is old and almost collapsed. As the camera moved closer, the creaking of the front door opening slowly filled the silence. Inside the house, the rooms were empty, covered in dust, old furniture draped with sheets. The air grew heavy, tense. In a long and narrow hallway, at the end was a door, slightly open. Then the screen flashed for a moment. What was happening was quite difficult to understand. The tension of the tape seemed to gradually seep into their space. A few seconds later, the camera was now in the basement, standing before a large circular symbol carved into the floor. Strange runes were etched into the surface. As they stared at it, they felt like they couldn't breathe. Then, a loud crash, and the screen jerked toward the far end of the basement. There, in the darkness, something moved. The two girls froze in place. It was tall, impossibly tall, with limbs that were too long and thin. Its face was hidden in the shadows, but its hollow eyes stared into the room. A faint whisper, barely audible, began to play through the TV speakers. But the sound quickly grew louder, more persistent, almost as if it was speaking directly to them. They seemed to be hypnotized. Lai couldn't take her eyes off the screen. Whispering like a mantra, Lai stood up and began to lose control of her body. Kan called her name, but it didn't seem to reach her ears. Lai walked towards the TV, eyes glassy, body stiff. She could feel Khan's eyes on her, but she couldn't stop. The figure on the screen seemed to pull Lai closer, its long, bony fingers stretched out as if wanting to catch her. Kan gasped, backing away. Kan suddenly realized that Lai was moving like a puppet on the TV. Lai continued to move like the figure on the screen, her body twisting unnaturally, her joints cracking. Kan could only scream in desperation. Lai continued to move as shown on the screen, her body contorted in a strange way, her joints cracking. Kan could only scream in vain. Lai's eyes began to roll back and a sick, twisted smile appeared on her face. Lai turned her head and approached Kan with her arms outstretched, her fingers slowly gripping her shoulders as if wanting to harm her. Khan, terrified, tried to reach out with trembling hands to stop the tape, but failed. The image on the screen mirrored every detail of what was happening in the room. Everything felt like something had stepped out of the TV. The long, spindly fingers stretched with gray, skeletal skin. The figure moved slowly toward them, its joints cracking with every step. as if just existing in this world was painful. And then the door burst open. It was Jay, our other roommate. The sudden interruption sent a shockwave through me, breaking the trance. Lai staggered backward, her arms falling to her sides. The figure retreated into the shadows with an ear-piercing screech that only Lai and Khan could hear. Then the figure was gone. We collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, looking at each other in shock. The only thought in their minds was to get out and never look back. They scrambled to their feet, fleeing the room without a second glance, leaving the cursed tape behind in front of a confused Jay. The noise on the TV was distorted, and the final image showed that shadowy figure coming from the basement. It thought it was screaming like it was sealed again. Maybe it almost succeeded in escaping, and maybe Lai and Khan would be the replacements. Vengeance of the soul. It was Saturday night, and Hannah was still at her university library, finishing a project due next week. Her friend had ditched her again, leaving her to finish it all on her own. She checked the clock and saw it was nearly 10 p.m., so she closed her textbooks and returned them to the shelf. Hannah went back to the table and put her books in her bag, and at that moment, she heard a noise. She looked around and thought she saw a man staring at her, but when she blinked, he was gone. Hannah left and headed home. She knew she shouldn't wander alone in a new city. Then she heard footsteps behind her and turned around, seeing a figure in a dark hoodie disappearing into an alleyway. She stopped, feeling a surge of fear. Was someone following her? She hurried on, relieved that her apartment was nearby. Hannah got into her building safely. She stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 14th floor. Just as the doors were closing, someone reached in to stop them. She held her breath as the doors opened, and a tall, fairly handsome man stepped into the elevator, his dark eyes looking at her with a warm expression. He started a friendly conversation, complimenting her outfit. She blushed, feeling a bit nervous. The elevator stopped on the 13th floor, and he stepped out, looking back at her and saying, "See you around." But as the doors started to close, Hannah saw him reach into his coat and pull out a shiny knife. Realizing the danger, she pulled out her phone as the elevator reached her floor. But just as she dialed the last digit for the police, the doors opened again. She screamed as she saw the man standing at the door, with nowhere left to run. He plunged the knife into her chest, her sweater soaking with blood. Pain spread across her chest as everything faded to black. The next morning, neighbors found Hannah dead in the elevator. Residents raised concerns about safety measures. Security cameras were installed, and more importantly, an emergency stop button was added to the elevator. Months passed, and the elevator killer remained uncaught. He prided himself on getting away with the perfect murder and wondered if he could pull it off again in the same building. He chose another Saturday night and saw a woman waiting to enter the elevator. He stood behind her, ensuring the guard was still distracted by his game on his phone. He pulled his hoodie tighter over his head as he noticed the camera. The doors opened, and the woman stepped inside. Just like before, she pressed 14, and he said he lived on the 13th floor as he pressed the button. But the woman didn't respond. She seemed strange, her head bowed, her hair covering most of her face. She wore a white dress and was barefoot, which he found odd, but her appearance didn't concern him. He kept a knife in his pocket, eager to use it. The 13th floor arrived, and he began to step out. He was ready to repeat what he'd done before, but as he turned back, he realized she was no longer in the elevator. Confusion crossed his face. He was certain she'd been there, but now the elevator was empty. He went in to check. The elevator door suddenly closed, and the overhead lights crunched and dimmed. He heard a hiss. The man felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up as a chill ran down his spine. The guy looked up, and his eyes widened. The woman was crawling on the ceiling, her hair growing long and slithering like a snake. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her smiling mouth revealed many sharp teeth. He noticed a blood stain on her sweater and realized she was Hannah, the woman he had murdered. Hannah's spirit reached out, grabbing his neck, savoring his terror. Then Hannah pulled him into her bloody mouth, her razor-sharp teeth waiting for him. His screams echoed within the metallic confines of the elevator, but no one heard. The killer became nothing more than a memory, consumed by the very spirit he had created. Stalkers in the dark. I started working as a security guard, night shifting at a small shopping mall in the city right after graduating high school. This job was supposed to be simple. Sit in front of the screen, watch people come and go, and occasionally handle shoplifters or suspicious behavior. But the truth is, the nights can be long, even boring. Until Black Friday arrived in the month leading up to Halloween. I had heard stories about the chaos, people acting as if they were clawing to get the best deals. It was madness, pushing and shoving like a zombie apocalypse. This year, I was scheduled for the dreaded Black Friday shift. It was my second year, and I thought I knew what to expect. What I didn't expect was the note. When I arrived for my shift that evening, I found a note waiting for me on my desk, right in front of the row of CCTV monitors. It simply read, "If you're in the dark, stay indoors." It was puzzling, and I had no idea who it was meant for or what it referred to. I felt a bit uneasy but brushed it off. Maybe it was a prank or something the cleaning crew accidentally left behind. I didn't want to dwell on it and focused on my job. As soon as the mall opened, chaos ensued. People pushed and shoved, scrambling for discounted items. Every walkie-talkie on the team was buzzing non-stop. We had 10 security guards on duty, and it still wasn't enough to manage the madness. Late in the evening, things calmed down a bit until I received a call over the radio. A group of men was reportedly mugging someone with a knife in the third-floor parking lot. I quickly decided to check the cameras to see what I was getting into. As I unlocked the door and swung it open, I nearly bumped into someone. There was a strange man sitting inside. He was standing in front of the screen, wearing a red and green Christmas outfit. His head turned toward the monitor, making me freeze. He slowly turned his face toward me, a pair of sunglasses covering his eyes, even though the room was pitch black. Before I could say a word, he stepped closer, his face just inches from mine, flashing a toothy grin, sharp teeth like a shark's. "Did you get my note?" I reached for the walkie-talkie, but before I could do anything, the lights in the room went out, plunging us into complete darkness. I raised my hands, bracing for him to lunge at me, but instead, I felt nothing. I shone the flashlight, and he had vanished, leaving the room empty with just me standing there. I tried to calm myself and refocus on my pressing duties. The dimly lit corridors of the mall were filled with strange decorations, shadows, and the faint echo of creepy sound effects coming from the nearby costume shop. As I walked around, I noticed something strange. A life-sized mannequin in the costume shop window. It was dressed in an outfit identical to that of the strange man. I turned to look behind me as I heard a noise coming from behind, glancing through the shop's glass. The mannequin was no longer inside. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and I heard a raspy laugh behind me. I turned around, my flashlight cutting through the darkness, and there he was, the man, grinning horrifically and then lunging toward me. I stumbled back, narrowly dodging him. I weaved between the aisles and ran up the escalator, my heart pounding as I tried to put as much distance as possible between us. After what felt like an eternity, I reached the security room and slammed the door shut, locking it tight behind me. I quickly accessed the camera feeds, searching for any sign of the man. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the screens, but I couldn't find him anywhere. Then, on one of the feeds, I saw him standing in the hallway just outside the security room, staring directly into the camera. A sinister smile plastered across his face, waving at me. I grabbed the walkie again, calling for backup, but the signal was distorted. Suddenly, the lights went out, plunging the room into darkness. I hurriedly fumbled for my flashlight. A creaking sound like claws scraping the door echoed. I braced myself, gripping the flashlight like a weapon, as the door swung open and he stepped inside, laughing mockingly at my fear. I remembered the emergency lever behind the desk. Without hesitation, I rushed over, pulling it down just as he reached for me. He lunged at me. We got caught in a struggle. He was stronger than he looked, his hands clawing at me as I tried to push him away. We slammed into the metal shelves, the impact echoing throughout the room. I pulled the walkie from my belt, calling for backup again. My voice trembled with tension, but I just hoped someone would hear me. After a tense struggle, I pushed him away one last time, and he staggered. This time, I seized the opportunity, quickly grabbing a metal rod nearby and locking it against the door, trapping him inside. I quickly called for assistance. I stood guard at the door, listening to his screams from the other side. Within minutes, 2 officers ran down the hallway, guns drawn. They reached me, and I unlocked the door, stepping back as they stormed in. I watched as they put him into the police car, his eyes still fixed on me until the very last moment. Back in the security room, I sat down, exhausted but relieved. I scrolled through the camera feeds, carefully checking each one. Then on the feed from the costume shop, I noticed something odd. A new mannequin, dressed in the same outfit, stood in the display window. My heart raced as I leaned closer to the screen. It was just a mannequin, right? As I looked, a shadow moved behind it, just a flicker, barely visible. My hand hovered over the controls, but I shook my head to clear my thoughts. Maybe it was just my imagination playing tricks after a long night, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching, waiting for me out there to confront it. The town's haunted mystery. And everything from that day began that night. While lying in bed, I couldn't escape the feeling of insecurity. Something is wrong. Lily's scream broke the silence, and I rushed to my child's room. Lily trembled, her eyes wide open in fear as she cried and pointed to me that there was a monster in the window. I hurried to the window, pulled back the curtains, but there was nothing there. Just the empty street and the trees. What is happening? I whispered to myself, feeling panic rise within me. I turned back to Lily, who was still staring at the window, pale and terrified. I stood frozen, trying to comfort her in my arms, though the unease gnawed at me. I stayed up late that night, with Lily between Kira and me. Kira, exhausted from sleepless nights, drifted off, leaving me on high alert. The following days were a chaotic mix of anxiety and paranoia. Lily's nightmares became a nightly occurrence, and each time, I found myself jolted awake by her screams. I tried to distract myself with errands around town, but whispers seemed to follow me everywhere I went. The locals had hollow smiles, with something in their eyes I couldn't quite identify. It felt like the whole town was watching me. Everything will be fine, a cheerful cashier said as I bought groceries, but her smile felt like a mask hiding something sinister. Just make a wish by the well. I never wanted this nightmare. I never wanted my family involved in any twisted game. One evening, after another night of Lily's screams, I found myself back at the well, drawn by some force I couldn't understand. The air was tense as I approached, Margaret's words echoing in my mind. As I stood there, I noticed the well's surface glistening under the moonlight, almost inviting me. I leaned over the edge, peering into the darkness. The chill of the night air made me shiver. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, my heart pounding. No one was there, but the feeling of being watched washed over me once again. I felt a presence lurking in the darkness, and panic took over. I ran home, my breaths coming fast and shallow. I rushed inside, slamming the door behind me. Kira was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV. I quickly ran to Lily's room to check on her and saw she was fast asleep. But when I looked closer, I noticed a thin layer of sweat on her forehead. Something wasn't right. I went back to Kira, pacing the floor, my mind spinning. We need to do something. This can't keep happening. Kira's gaze was distant, lost in thought. She said to me, "Maybe we should leave. We could pack up and go somewhere else." "No," I snapped stubbornly, feeling the weight of despair. "We can't keep running. We need to find a way to fix this." That night, I decided to confront Margaret. I needed to know the truth. With my heart racing, I left the house and headed to hers. As I approached, the atmosphere changed. I knocked on the door, fear rising within me. She greeted me with a smile that seemed friendly, but it didn't feel genuine at all. I desperately told her I needed to know what was happening. Her expression turned serious, her eyes narrowing. "You know, wishes come with consequences," she said softly, leaning closer. "You wished for things to be better. But what if there's a cost?" I felt myself unraveling as she kept talking about what I had lost. She tilted her head, that predatory smile returning. "It's not always clear. Sometimes you get what you wish for by sacrificing something else, something precious." I stumbled back, wondering if I had traded my daughter's happiness for a hollow life. When I returned home, I found Lily in her room, but she wasn't the girl I once knew. Laughter seemed to have been replaced by an eerie silence. She looked at me with hollow eyes, like an empty shell. Regret weighed heavily on me. I had wanted to fix everything, but I had only made it worse, foolishly believing in something dark and twisted. I returned to the well, desperate to undo my wish. I knelt by the edge, staring into the darkness. I want my daughter back. I didn't want this to happen. But the well remained silent. Days passed, and our home became like a prison as Lily worsened, her strange behaviors leaving me helpless and heartbroken, unsure of what to do. Every time I went outside, those around me kept smiling, but their eyes hid a secret, a dark truth I could never grasp. They too had made their wishes, and I was just another pawn in their game. In the end, I made a decision. I would play the game, just like Margaret had. I would find another family and make them wish, too, to replace my daughter. As I walked through the town, I spotted a family moving in down the street, a young couple with a little girl who looked just like Lily. I approached them, a smile spreading across my face. "Welcome to the neighborhood," I said, hiding the darkness within. Then no, with a new cast in the pipeline. Maybe the darkness had clouded my vision and taken over. I didn't know when this would end, or if there was any escape. The girl looked up, her eyes bright and full of life, unaware of the fate that awaited her. Perhaps I had to be the villain, to save my daughter, my family. The haunting of the abandoned station. It was a chilly autumn evening in our small town. Inside the diner, warmth enveloped me. Sarah, my girlfriend, was finishing her cup of coffee. We had been dating for a few months, and tonight seemed like the perfect opportunity for an adventure since we both enjoyed that. After dinner, we decided to explore the old abandoned train station in town. The train station loomed before us, Built in the early 1900s, it had once been the heart of our town, but now it lay in ruins, overtaken by nature. My heart raced, but I didn't want to show fear in front of Sarah. I reassured her, even though I felt a hint of doubt creeping in. She began glancing around nervously and told me she felt something was off. Then, from afar, we heard a faint whistle echoing through the air. Sarah asked me, "There are no trains running here anymore, right?" I only knew that no trains had run here for decades. The whistle grew louder, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of wheels clattering on metal tracks. Sarah tightened her grip on my arm. "We need to go right now," she urged, panic rising in her voice. But somehow I lost control, as if mesmerized by the sound, stepping closer to the edge of the platform, staring down the empty tracks. The sound grew louder, yet no train was in sight, just the tracks stretching infinitely into the darkness. Then, as if summoned from nowhere, a blinding beam of light appeared, racing toward us. It approached quickly, gliding down the tracks like a ghost, but something was off. That light wasn't attached to any train. It hovered. Sarah screamed, urging me to stop, pulling me back just as the invisible train roared past. Its force nearly knocked us over, the platform shaking violently. For a moment, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, the station was silent again, the air heavy and still. Distant sounds returned, but something had changed. Sarah was gone. "Sarah," I called, panic rising within me. I searched for her frantically. Then I saw it, a shadowy figure standing on the tracks, barely visible in the dim light. It was tall, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, its eyes glowing red like embers in the dark. A chill ran down my spine as it raised its hand, pointing down the tracks. Far down the tracks, I saw Sarah, walking away from me. But she wasn't walking normally. Her movements were stiff, like a puppet controlled by invisible strings. "Sarah, stop," I yelled. But my voice echoed back, swallowed by the night. I ran toward her, desperation driving each of my steps. The closer I got, the more horrific reality became. Her face was blank, expressionless, her eyes vacant and soulless. It was as if her very soul had been drained. Tears streamed down my face as I reached for her, but the distance between us never closed. The shadowy figure at the station let out a raspy laugh, echoing through the trees, sending waves of fear crashing over me. I turned to face the figure, but it had vanished. In its place stood an old, rusted,